The Toronto Comic Arts Festival would like to honor and acknowledge the original caretakers of this land, the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are in a territory that was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon One Pump Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to share and care for the land. This land is also covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This acknowledgement is a reminder that we are all treaty people and that we have a responsibility to the land and each other. TCAF celebrates the long history of sharing stories on this land and is committed to increasing Indigenous voices and perspectives in our programming.
Welcome everyone to the TCAF 2024 virtual program, Comics and Music. My name is Faduma from the programming team. We are privileged to present insightful discussions featuring esteemed guests Beddo, Eric Kostiuk Williams, and Raeghan Buchanan, moderated by Ben Shannon. Ben Shannon is a CBC Radio Digital's art director and a founding member of the Royal Academy of Illustration and Design. Ben has worked as an illustrator, animator, and comic artist for clients like Rolling Stone, Marvel, and National Geographic. Whew, wow. Mark your calendars for May 11th and 12th as the TCAF Festival unfolds. Additionally, our digital marketplace commences on May 3rd and concludes on May 24th. Explore the exciting lineup of creators and events on our official website, TorontoComics.com, and stay informed. It's on our Instagram handle, TorontoComics. Missed any part of the action? Fear not, as all of our digital programs are available for retrospective viewing on our YouTube channel, Toronto Comics, and immerse yourself in the wonderful digital programs to come and physical programs. Welcome to TCAF 2024. Let's begin. Ben, take it away.
Oh my gosh, guys, you're in for a really lucky one today because we have three ultra talents with us. So guys, I want to keep this a little open. So when I ask a question, if I ask it directly to you, I don't want any of you to feel like you can't chime in if you have something to add to that. So please, keep it totally open. And I would like you all to take a chance to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of details about yourself. I guess we'll start with you, Raeghan.
Hi, I'm Raeghan. I am an artist. I do comics. I think at this point I'm most known for the first issue of The Secret History of Black Punk. I also do all sorts of art like murals, record covers, zines and things like that, October art zine. And I spent a lot of time in punk bands, and that's kind of the stuff, the subject matter that I like to kind of hover around. So.
Amazing. Beddo?
Hi, what's up, everybody? My name is Beddo. I'm a Toronto-based artist, comic book artist, illustrator, and I like to do a lot of, conventions around the country, as well as in the States, and just getting my artwork out there to the world. So busy doing that.
Amazing. And Eric?
Hi, I am Eric Kostiuk Williams. I'm an illustrator and cartoonist living in Toronto. I've been making comics professionally for a bit over a decade, and while they're my primary focus, my practice has expanded to include a lot of queer nightlife flyers, record covers, murals, harm reduction campaigns, music videos, etc. A lot of the work I do is based in Toronto and about Toronto, but in recent years, it's expanded to include some work in New York and San Francisco as well.
Amazing. So this one is going to be to the group because this is music and comics. Can anybody say or just speak to a piece of music or an album that changed the direction of your life, or something where you were like, this inspired me to make art?
I can. That's actually really easy for me because the way that I got into punk rock was like my older brothers. And so I had an older brother who like would send cassette tapes home, and they were like mixtapes. So there was one that was entitled, he had run away from home. He was living in Pittsburgh and he would be sending music back. So he had like a cassette that he sent to my other brother that was called Laughing the World Cries. And it had like Dead Kennedys and DRI, Discharge, Poison Idea, New Model Army. And like, for me, like that was the, you know, kind of beginning of me being like super into punk. And punk is, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just the music, it's like the flyers and stuff like that. He would send me home the flyers with like notes on them and stuff like, keep your head up, don't let them grind you down, and all this stuff like that. So like my introduction to music and art and like comics and stuff like that was like all together. So that mixtape from my brother was very influential in my young life.
That's beautiful. Actually, you reminded me too. When I was 16, I got my head stomped at a DRI show.
Oh
Oh,
no.
I believe it.
For me myself,
or Eric, yeah.
if I could, I'll just jump in. I'll say for me, growing up, my mom was a big reggae fan. So a lot of old reggae album covers from like the 70s and 80s had amazing illustration and graphic design. So just seeing a lot of those around the house in her collection, you know, I'd pick up, I was an artist from a young child, but just recalling drawing a lot of those album covers. Of course, one of the most famous musicians in the world, Bob Marley, has some amazing album artwork. Just illustrating a lot of those, going along with the music I was listening to at the time. That's a memory for me.
Oh.
Yeah, I got a lot of happy memories of being a kid drawing to Bob Marley.
Yeah, definitely.
Eric?
Yeah, I grew up in Ottawa, and my parents were big lovers of music. And in high school, my dad would take me to this used CD store downtown. And the access to underground music in Ottawa was there, but it took a little bit to kind of suss it out. I've always said it's kind of the world's biggest small town in some ways. But I'll never forget being at this used CD store and coming across Bjork's Homogenic album, which as like a 13, 14-year-old, first of all, like the album artwork kind of blew my mind and wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before. And then the same was the case with the music. That album in particular really like defied genres in some ways. Like it was combining like classical music with pop, with like techno and electronic. It kind of, it really blew my brain open and inspired me in my art practice a lot, just like wanting to challenge the boundaries of like what belonged where. And yeah, like it's an album I listen to today and it still sounds like it came out like 10 years in the future or something.
Yeah, I saw a lot of like awesome Bjork references in some of your work. And
yeah.
I was actually going to ask you, so that perfectly leads into it. I saw Bjork, Teaches of Peaches, Orville Peck, and of course, Fucked Up. Can you talk about the Fucked Up album cover?
Oh my God. Well, that was one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. Fucked Up, for those who don't know, is a really influential Canadian punk and hardcore band who, forget how long they've been around, maybe since the 90s or early 2000s. But I'd known of them for years, and just by virtue of having lived in Toronto long enough, I like got like some of the band members became like friends of friends and people I would see at parties. And the album artwork actually came about through comics in a weird way, where friends and I were all part of a book club where we were reading Grant Morrison's The Invisibles. And one of the guys at the book club was Mike Halichuk in the band Fucked Up. And I didn't know that it was like that Mike until a couple weeks of hanging out. And then I was like, oh my God, it's like this guy from this band. And after getting to know each other for a month or two, he'd like seen some of my comics, and he's a very like sweet but kind of stoic guy. And he just kind of came over to me one day, was like, hey, want to make album art for us someday? I was like, oh. Yeah, kind of blew my mind. But it was it was cool. Yeah, it was cool to work with him because he himself, like, he's such a comics lover, and it was for the album Dose Your Dreams that came out in 2018, which he had a lot of creative control over. So yeah, I worked with him pretty intensively around like the concept and execution over like a few months. Yeah, it was really ambitious, but I was happy with how it came together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. Actually, I did a drawing for Damien from Effed Up once. I did a drawing for it was like a blog about parenting, and I drew him and his wife and his child, and then they contacted me and they're like, is that a real piece? And I'm like, no, I drew it digitally. And they're like, can you make it a real piece? So I ended up just meeting Damien like on the street, like on a street corner. Like, here you go.
That's so amazing.
But that brings me, Beddo, you have a daughter.
Yes. I have a few children actually.
Oh, well, so okay, so as a dad as well, and as a giant hip hop fan, we before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about RZA and the Wu-Tang Clan, and I'm a giant Wu-Tang fan, and I think the best was I got to see ODB in New York, not long before we lost him, but so as a dad, I am walking a real tightrope here of introducing my kids to hip hop because a lot of what I love, like upon listening to it again, I have to be like, oh, yeah, maybe I need to give a lot of backstory behind this, or give a lot of. Do you walk that line as well with your kids and introducing them to hip hop, or like sharing your love of hip hop with them? Or do you just let the floodgates open?
Well, you definitely have to be careful. I would agree with that. I mean, a lot of this stuff is not exactly age appropriate. I have some of my children are younger, so I wouldn't want to introduce them to any kind of, language or subject matter that might be a bit too rough for their age. You don't want them going back to grade 1, spitting like
right,
all kind of curse words and this and that. So, but no, definitely when I play music around the house and stuff like that, I'll be playing stuff that I like. And sometimes if it's in the background, they pick up the vibes of it without necessarily listening to exactly word for word what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good way to just kind of give them a touch of your musical interests, have stuff in the background or sometimes in the car. They're not necessarily zoned in on it, but just having it around is good. And then when they get to that age where they start making their own musical choices, they kind of have an idea of, what directions to go into.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any like connection? Like, are you teaching your kids music at all by any chance? Because Raeghan was saying that, Raeghan, you play in bands, right? Does everybody here make music as well?
What instruments do you play, Raeghan? I play drums. I've been like in my bands, I've like played and sang at the same time. I've got like a traditional drum set that I like supplemented with like a sample pad.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much. And I bought a synthesizer during the pandemic, and I haven't like really gotten to use it much. I just went like we were talking about before, I just went to James Spooner's like Black Punk Now festival in Brooklyn, and I rode up with the band Minority Threat, and
best name.
Yeah, they're the first of all, I love those dudes so much because they're like a hardcore band, but they're like the most sorry I'm telling their business, but like they're like the most like sensitive and like loving, not to say that hardcore people are not loving, but like towards each other they're just so careful and like polite and calm, and they're so funny and stuff like that. So it's like there's not a lot of black punk in the Midwest comparable to like other places in the United States. I'm like so lucky that like Minority Threat is like an Ohio band. But like I think I might start, me and the guitar player from Minority Threat, Daryl Chess, we've started talking about like maybe starting a hardcore band. So I'm probably gonna break up. I'm not in a band right now, but I'm definitely moving towards breaking out my stuff again. During the pandemic, I feel like a lot of bands broke up and like there was just like a lot of stuff going on. I know a lot of bands formed like in the world and things like that with all the time, but for me it was a concentration on art period. So now I'm kind of looking around like, oh, like going to a show like that, like James Spooner being in the music world and the comics world too and stuff is just like such an inspiration to see like all those bands like playing, like, so sorry I got off the
Totally.
subject.
No, if this, I don't want to derail us too much. What synthesizer did you get?
A Roland mini synth.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, they make great synth.
Much like what in my last band, I had my bass player she was like she's a pianist or whatever, or so she's taught me like little tricks, but I when I've written songs on it, I have like pieces of paper that have stickers on them with like numbers because I'm not trained in anything. I've never, you know what I mean? Like musically, so it's like song 1 that I made, and then I have to put like the piece of paper in front of the synthesizer and then like kind of like remember the order of like where I put the stickers, because you know what I mean? So that's how I like write songs or whatever.
I think traditional musical education is highly overrated.
Well, it's cool. What's cool, you were talking to Beddo or whatever, what's cool is that people my age, I think that their parents were like, not always. I do know a substantial amount of people whose parents were musicians and like passed that on to their kids and stuff like that. Like, again, I was just in Brooklyn, my friend Flora from the band Ma'afa, like her parents were like jazz musicians and stuff like that, and like it caused her to be able to like start playing music from a very young age and like bring like those jazz influences like back around into hardcore. But the people that are my age, like that are parents and stuff like that, they are like, have an instrument. Oh, you're 5, here's a drum kit. You know what I mean? And like they like from a very young age, I think like kids are having like more of, people who, that's just my opinion, I guess. That's anecdotal. I don't know.
Yeah, I got one of those drum kits.
Mhm.
We have one in our house, so all kind of training, but they always get the sticks and
Yeah.
I go to work on it every now and again. So I think it's important to have things like that around. And they'll pick it up.
I think that that's kind of the right approach. Well, in my mind, I mean, there are some kids, of course, that, being in a traditional setting where they're learning music traditionally will connect with them. But from my experience, I think the most important thing is exactly that, Beddo, is just having an instrument around that they have access to it and they can play around with it.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. We have one of those like little ukuleles, those little toy guitars.
Of course.
Honestly, that's one of the most utilized toys in our house. Like all the kids pick it up and play it all the time. So just funny what they're drawn to.
Yeah, it's super fun to just see what comes out of them. Eric, did you have any musical inclination when you were younger, or you just love music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm primarily just like a huge fan of it. We did have to do like the elementary school I went to, we did like the school band stuff. But like you were both saying, I think I would have connected to it more, like if there was a more kind of visceral, kind of less formal approach to it. Like we learned it in the more kind of conventional like sheet music way, which I think I eventually found just like wasn't for me. Although I remember like I have some early memories of all of us performing together, and there is that feeling, it's kind of like, yeah, this kind of exhilarating that you're just kind of in motion and in like harmony with like everyone around you. Like I remember that being a really exciting feeling. And it wasn't until years later, I think it was hearing about how like the musician Peaches came up in Toronto. It was very much like not through formal music training. And it was like, yeah, just like her messing around on the synthesizer. And I heard actually that she introduced MIA to music back in the day. Like
Oh,
MIA
that
had
totally makes
been,
sense because they use the same synth.
right? Yeah, like my MIA had been
Also a Roland,
primarily a visual artist.
MC505.
Yeah. Yeah, right. When you mentioned that, Raeghan, I was like, oh, that rings a bell. Yeah. Because yeah, the lore is that MIA had been a visual artist and Peaches is like, no, you should make music too. So who knows? I don't know. I'd love to give it a shot someday.
I
I
was just
had no.
reading about the artist Santa Gold, and
Mm.
kind of like doing more industry stuff. And then she was in a band with Chuck Treese, like the skateboarder, who's like a drummer and everything like that. And she did like an NPR Tiny Desk or something like that, where she was just like, oh yeah, Chuck Treese was the one that told me to do vocals and sing. It was kind of funny, like when people are just like, so good at something, but like you learn that they like were, somebody was like, oh, try this. And then like, that's like, oh my God, what? You didn't just want to like this didn't you didn't come out just doing this thing like oh cool singing and then you're Santa.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, that I love hearing stuff like that because sometimes I feel like there's a like preconception that yeah, like all musicians were like child prodigies or something, but the reality is that so many people come into it later in life or through less conventional means. Same with comics, yeah.
I remember being in high school and being like a teenager and seeing someone playing guitar and being like, that's too late for me. They're already way ahead of me. And and I'm like, and then
I
finding out years later that like people who I love didn't pick up a guitar till they were like 20. Like,
20 years old like thinking I was too late for everything. Like I thought I was so old at 20 and now I'm 42 and I don't think I'm as old as I did when I was 20. Like it's crazy.
Eric, I have one other question. So I saw in your stuff you did a poster for Black Belt Cinema, the Toronto uh it's like a, I don't know if any guys have, if you guys have seen any of it. It's just like wacky movies curated by Brandon Lim, who's from bass player from Hussey, Toronto Homicide Squad, Teen Tits, Wild Wives. What else? Oh, Yamataka Sonic
Yeah,
Titan, probably the
yeah.
biggest thing he's how did that come about?
Also just through like hanging out in Toronto for a while, like Brandon has been a friend for a number of years. And actually during lockdown, I was like locked down like bubble buddies with him and his partner because they
Oh,
lived in the neighborhood. So we got the private Black Belt cinema experience through all of 2020 where we were just watching like the weirdest like B movies and like kung fu films from the 1980s or whatever. Yeah, Brandon has a really encyclopedic knowledge of those kind of like cultier films. And he's recently been able to program more of it at the Review Cinema in town. So it's so cool to see him like finding his audience with that. We've enough weirdos in Toronto who are into that sort of thing. It's great.
Totally. And Beddo, with that connecting with musicians, through your work, have you found that you've actually connected with somebody who you respect, or just somebody like a musician out there who you never thought that your paths would cross, but your artwork has led you to them?
Yeah, I have. I think with the the whole social media age, it's a lot easier now to have your artwork seen by a wide audience. And sometimes that even goes to people who you wouldn't expect, or musicians who you're a fan of. And one thing I can remember is that I did a piece about Erykah Badu, a comic book cover, which was it was basically a mashup of Silver Surfer #1 and
Oh
her,
yes, I love that cover.
yeah, and her debut album, which was Baduism. So I did a mashup of those two, posted it on my social media, and she was like, she loved it. She reposted it on her page.
Wow.
Yo, this is so dope.
Amazing.
So yeah, stuff like that is cool when you get to make that connection, and very like unexpected. You're just putting it out there as a piece of artwork that you did, but to get that reaction is dope.
Did you happen to see, oh gosh, I always forget his name, the looping guy. He has a French name. Mark Reblay, Erykah Badu, and Reggie Watts did like a house party together, maybe like a year ago. Incredible.
You mean Lupin, like the Netflix show Lupin?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't see that they had a house party there. Okay.
Yeah, like I only saw it online. So if it's connected to the TV show, then I suppose, yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's oh, and I had one other thing, Raeghan. So you were talking about going to the James Spooner show,
Yeah.
and it was called the Black Punk Now Festival.
Mhm.
I'm really late to the party on discovering the band Death.
Yeah.
Was Death a big sea change? Like that was one that like I was kind of out of the woodworks for me. I was like, incredible. Here's a band that is just forging the way so early and seemed to be completely overlooked in a way that they should
Yeah.
not have been.
No, I remember, so first of all, the record that they put out, I think it was in 2009, For All the World to See. That's like, it's like so good. It's like an amazing record. And I think I learned about it from somebody who I was like dating at the time when that came out. So I learned about it like after, I don't know if people have seen like the movie where like there's like this whole big
I still haven't.
there's like this whole big connection of like how they tried to get a record label, or they tried to get a record deal, but they couldn't. They tried to like make them change their name or become R&B, or like not be punk, because that's not, what Black people do. And they just kind of stuck to their guns, and then couldn't get a deal, and just kind of gave up, and went and did other bands or moved away from each other and stuff like that. So that's when a lot of people found out about them, from the movie, and from the record. I know that they were not, from looking at message boards and things like that, they were not like 100% totally unknown or totally lost. Like from what I've learned, people have talked about them on these like message boards where people like rabidly, I'm saying that we're going to collect records and 7-inches and things like that. There were people who knew about them. But it's really interesting case. One of the most interesting things that I think about them is that a lot, or see or whatever, is a lot of people discount them as proto-punk, since they were so like isolated, and they're not going to be quoted the way, or like connected the way like the New York Dolls or the Stooges, or or anything like that is connected to punk or whatever. But I always think it's funny because like there's that like selling out thing, right? Where like punk rockers like you know, you sold out if you did this, you sold out if you did this. So here's a band who literally never sold out in any version of that or whatever, but they're kind of pushed out because they didn't sell out.
When
but
they
like,
should be top of the mountain. Yeah.
Right. Well, but to be real, like if you've heard of a band, they've probably sold out in some capacity, because the reason that you've heard of them is because they got a record deal. And I know like the definition of selling out, it's just an accusation that's leveled at people to do a separation and like whatever. It's just, it's fun and maddening to argue about punk rock and the origins and like record labels and the different genres and stuff like that. But I really do think that that's like very, very interesting. And they still play. I saw them play. They played Columbus maybe 5 years ago or something like that. So I have not seen them lately, but I think that I saw that they're playing with Rough Francis, which is one of their like kids bands or whatever. So it's like a band full of brothers, or and then like one of their kids and the brothers there or whatever. I know that was a very awkward sentence. I apologize.
Oh no, that too, like it seems like proto-punk is like punk. Many years ago, I had a argument with my uncle, who is a guitar
and you
freak.
remembered it.
Pardon?
And you remembered it. That's how these arguments are.
Oh yeah, and he said, "What's your favorite punk band?" And I said, "Add N to X," and it's like a half gay, half straight synthesizer punk band, like live drums and synthesizers. And he's like, "That does not count." Like, and then we got into a huge argument about, does Suicide count as punk?
See, I have like this experience of like, I was just talking about this on the road. Like I said, we drove up to New York. So, you know, we're in the car for 12 hours or whatever, about how like, in my experience, my brother and, you know, some of the other people around me put so many bands together that I do not have the same limitation or like solid line between genres, because I was listening to like, you know, post-punk and new wave and things like that. So sometimes I see people be like, well, technically Devo's not punk. And I'm like, well, how? You know what I mean? But I listened to it all together.
Pretty punk.
like not like anyone turned around in the car and said, hey, when you talk about, you know, this band, new wave's not a real term and it has nothing to do with punk or whatever. But, you know, and these terms like change, like, you know, I see people arguing about how the first wave of punk rockers are not punk. Blonde, or the Ramones are a pop punk band, and, you know, Blondie is disco, or, you know, whatever. And it's just like, no, this is punk. That was punk. They like, you know what I mean? It was all different from each other. But I mean, different people come into it at different ages and through different like avenues or whatever. So like the different, you know, the different genres like mean something different to different people in different regions. And, you know, so I get it, but there just is not that much separation for me for it.
Well,
So.
that's a great point, because I actually had written down here. So as Raeghan said, like we maybe don't have, being a younger generation, we maybe don't have the same limitations that older generations do about what we can listen to. Like we can, like you were saying, Eric, like appreciate a Bjork that's like crossing genres and like bringing in really outsider influences, or Beddo, like, as you know, like all of hip hop is sampling from all across, like they're finding samples in like from anywhere. You can get the heart of what you like. But that said, does anybody have a style of music that they just hate? And not to make this not a place of love, but I think you're allowed to say like, I just don't get this.
I wouldn't say so. I don't think I could ever say that I hate a type of music. Like I've always heard something that I would say, you know what, that sounds dope, or no matter what music it is, there's something that will touch you, in my opinion. I don't think I could hate a whole genre of music personally.
Well, you're like, you know, we were talking about like hip hop and sampling and stuff like that, it like, or, you know, wouldn't it be difficult to just cut yourself off from a style, or you know what I mean, when it's like a collage sometimes, you know?
True.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like over the years, my tastes are just like expanding and like blurring. And there have been genres that I haven't connected with in the past that I've come around to as I've gotten older. That being said, when I was traveling, I was in Latvia, like in Eastern Europe, a few months ago, and for some reason, every coffee shop was playing this like weird kind of swing music with dubstep mixed in. So if I could like say there's one genre I'm not a fan of, it's that particular fusion.
Dub
It's a
swing.
bit cursed. I don't know. It was
Or swing
a
step.
bit concerning. But who knows? Maybe in like 5 years, I'll be like, you know what? Actually, it's time for my critical reassessment of that.
Yeah, I can say pretty definitively, like, I love all kinds of music, but and I love early country, and I love what country's trying to get up to now. But there was like a just a section of country in the 90s to the early 2000s that I was just like, oh, this is not for me.
There.
Okay, I'm gonna throw one out to the room here. So as people who draw, do you guys have any advice for like somebody young who might be watching this now about cartooning or comics or drawing, or something that was like a hard-won piece of wisdom that you would like to give somebody now so that they don't have to struggle for years to learn that thing?
I think my thing would be to make stuff that like you are excited about, you know, like as opposed to making stuff that you think is popular or that you think yeah, like rather than trying to be like strategic about it or looking around to see what's happening, it's like make something that you would really nerd out over. And I think work that has that excitement in it, which kind of applies to like the panel here, like a lot of our work ties in with the music we're passionate about, you know? Like whenever I see work that I can tell someone's excited about, it just like has that like energy radiating off it. Yeah.
That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, that's really good. I'd also say persistence is key. Like we were mentioning before, you know, when you're in your high school or in your 20s, you think it's like you're nearing the end. You think you're so old at that time.
Yeah.
If you start then and you keep going, you know, drawing every day, you're going to really improve. You're going to get better. You're going to find your niche. You're going to go in different directions. I mean, there's a lot of time there. And if you use it wisely and stick with your craft, I think that's very, very important. That's what's working for me, at least.
I think that is super important because like when you're young, like, you know, those failures really feel ultra big. Like you spend an hour on a drawing and it stinks and you're like, well, I stink, I'm no good at it. But after putting in hours and days and years, those don't bother you at all. You're just like, well, this one stinks. All right, next one. Yeah, there we go. We got it better next time. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sticking with it. And Raeghan?
So I guess the advice that I try to give people is when they ask it something like that is I don't know how to say this. So I try to tell people to kind of find like their people and find like a crew and stuff like that of people who are coming up at the same time as you and like interested in the same things as you, so that you can kind of play off of each other, and so that you can, like, I don't know, kind of have like a go-between or have like a dynamic or whatever that other people can be interested in. And I think obviously I'm not an artist that came from, you know, like working for, you know, any big three or any or coming up doing any of that work. So this is like not something, that kind of industry stuff is like not something that I'm like super familiar with. But for example, like I think things are different now where people are doing a lot of indie comics and like people are getting a lot of indie deals or, you know, as always self-publishing and stuff like that. And I think, you know, even like with the thought that some people have like that you need to impress somebody or that you need to like get in somewhere, there unfortunately is like some predatory people in like all industries, but like in comics and stuff like that. And like kind of like people thinking that they need to get in with other people that are more established or whatever can put you in a dangerous position at times, especially as a woman or like somebody who is in like vulnerable or anything like that. But in for my case or whatever, like ignoring any kind of like people who are or not really caring as much about impressing people who are already been there, but more going on the adventures with my friends or whatever, then we're like all going through it together. And literally if nobody pays attention to us, I feel like I'm in like the coolest stuff that you read about these art movements, like in like the Harlem Renaissance or, you know, different things where I'm, you know, getting together with like my art friends, like drinking beers and like arguing about stuff that like nobody else cares about or whatever. It was like really fun just to like talk about that stuff. And so like your life is like less stressful for you to just kind of concentrate on like your crew and the people who are coming up with you, and like you have the same challenges and you can depend on each other and forming a community in that way.
I think
That's
that's
such a
incredible.
yeah, that's such a beautiful point, Raeghan. Because I've with comics in particular, like it can be such a solitary practice that I think for a lot of cartoonists, it feels like it's like just us against the world and like no one understands or whatever. And yeah, I've found it so rewarding to find like peers who are like in it with me, you know? And to get like feedback from them too, like to like share your work with them in a critical way is like so important, and like stuff you can't find that easily otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, have any of you seen the documentary about Klaus Nomi? What's it called? The Klaus Nomi song?
The Nomi song, yeah.
The Nomi song.
So
That's
good.
It's and like in that, like, so Klaus and the band that they have, they're coming up, and then a record label kind of picks Klaus Nomi away from that band, and you can just see like being separated from the people that Klaus came up with. It ended up going absolutely horrible. It's a sad and heartbreaking story, but
that is such a common thing. That is such
yeah,
a in the music industry.
And things would have been so different if Klaus had just been able to stick with their crew, right? Like they would have had that support all throughout of being like, yeah, I think absolutely finding a support group of people who are at your level, so that if you become bigger, like that was, remember Robert Crumb talked about that in the Robert Crumb documentary too, where he got big. He didn't get big with anybody. And then suddenly he was surrounded by yes people who just said, everything you're doing is great. Like whether he thought it was or not. Yeah. Like, but you can trust those people who you came up with to be honest with you and to challenge your decisions.
Yeah. That's like a music industry thing too. I feel like people, you know, or people you know, with the hangers on and stuff like that. It's kind of funny to think about comic books with like hangers and comic book creators with like hangers on. But
a slightly different level.
You have your entourage.
entourage.
Exactly. So this is just one, would you guys have any, like, what are you listening to right now? Like when you work, like just for advice for anybody who's watching this, if they want to listen to something good while they're working, what's something that is currently like on your playlist where you're like, I'm in love with this at the moment? Doesn't have to stand the test of time.
Um, I so I like moved my was kind of moving around during the pandemic, and then I like had my entire record collection in my parents' basement for like 3 years. And I got it back like recently, and I've just been kind of like listening to every record I have in order. So I'm not on like not in order of like genre or anything like that, but just like listening to everything I have like one time. And then I like put it over and I'm like, okay, I listen to that. No, like, I'm just like listening to my entire collection. So I'm
I've
not
always meant to do that.
it's taking a really long time. I didn't think it would take I think I've been doing it for like a month and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm starting to get lost. Like I have like now I have like bookmarks in my shelves.
Nice.
But I'm not really like I'm organizing them by year as opposed to like, you know, like decade or whatever, as opposed to like alphabetical or like I don't know how anybody else really organizes them or whatever. But I have really been just like going through like everything that I have. So I don't know. The other day I was listening to, kind of like the Pittsburgh hardcore or whatever, like Half-Life, Osrotten, my brother's band Submachine, the Pits. Well, that's not Pittsburgh, but like sometime like the stuff that I listened to maybe even at the same time or got into at the same time. So kind of like crust punk bands and stuff like that. And it was really cool because like I'm a little bit older now, and sometimes I think that like I don't know, listening to those records from that time, those times or whatever, reminds me of how I was when I was younger and everything was more black and white. And it was like, it's kind of a good feeling to like remind yourself like that you, even as you move forward in life, and have to like make money for rent or whatever, that it's like, there's such a pressure to like grow up and turn into somebody who cares about like material things or getting ahead, and it's just like not something I care about. Like I don't care if I ever own a house. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't like own a lot of items. I was in a band one time where the singer was like, you wear like the same clothes, aren't you tired of being photographed in the same clothes? And I'm like, no, I just really don't care. And sometimes like I feel like kind of battered into like growing up and like and matching other people's lives or whatever, and like to listen to like some of those records when I was forming my identity, like the stuff that I was like forming my identity with or whatever, it just really taps back into that part. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't have to care. I don't care. I really don't. I just want to draw comics and listen to music and have dumb conversations with my friends. Like I don't care if that ever changes.
And wearing the same clothes every time is very much like a cartoon character. So it helps out with, like, this is our whole comic vibe. Yeah.
I had like a uniform before, and I know there's like that thing like punks is a uniform, but I just, half your wardrobe is just band shirts that somebody gave you, and they're like black and white because, it's cheaper to print black and white. So I got a lot of black and white clothes,
Beddo, do you have a current album that you are enjoying, or are you doing the same? Are you going through all your albums?
No, what I do is I just have a playlist that whenever I hear something that I like, I add it to the playlist, or whenever someone, puts me on to a new group, a new band, whatever it is, add it to the playlist, and I just press shuffle whenever I'm drawing or working. And the playlist is like probably like 4 days long or something like that. So you're always
Is
hearing
it shared online? Can the people who are watching this maybe check it out?
It's not shared online, no.
Okay.
But it's really diverse. Like it has everything on there. Like pop music, hip hop, Afro beats, like pop from the 80s, rock music from the 80s, 90s. So just different things that I hear, different things that I like. I always just add it to the playlist, and it just gives me a different feeling when I'm working. You're hearing a variety of a variety of music. I don't know if other artists do that, but I've been on that for a while.
I have a playlist like that, and anybody who came in to hear it, it would be like audio whiplash as they changed from genre to genre.
Yeah.
Eric?
Yeah, I have like a few separate go-tos depending on what kind of work I'm doing. If I'm doing the writing side of comics, which I often find the most challenging to me, I love to put on kind of like sparse, like electronic-y stuff, like whether it's like Aphex Twin or like even like a Philip Glass like instrumental thingy, or like Flying Lotus if I want something like a little more groovy. I have also been going through my record collection again during lockdown years, like spending more time at home than I used to. And I really like listening to records while drawing from like a practical sustainability standpoint, because since you have to get up and like switch the side over every 20 minutes, that reminds you to like get up and like stretch, which is really important, just so you're not like getting your hands all messed up. And if I'm doing the more drawing side of it, especially if I'm doing like poster illustration work, I love to listen to really upbeat, like house or techno or even like cheesy pop stuff. Lately, I've also been really into this website, NTS Radio, which is free to use for anybody. And they just upload like DJ sets from all over the world, like all different kinds of genres, but it's really well curated. And sometimes I'll just like press play on a random thing and just see where it takes me. And that's helped expose me to a lot of new music, which is really exciting. And it gets you, I feel like with using like streaming platforms like Spotify, they start to kind of feed you the same stuff that you always listen to. Like they think they have you figured out.
Yeah.
So it's really
It's
fun
kind
to
of
go to a
insulting,
website.
actually.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, what do you take me for? So going to NTS just feels really expansive, like just to see stuff, like to hear stuff you never would have come across otherwise. Keeps the world exciting.
I wrote it down. That's great advice. We're actually getting close to the end, guys. So what I would like you to do
Already?
is yeah, unbelievably. Isn't that wild? Yeah. I would like you guys to, oh wait, are we? Yeah, I think we are, right? We started at 12. So if you guys could each go around and say, if somebody is new to your work, what would you say is a work that you would recommend that is there on board for you? So Eric, I'll let you go first.
Oh, well, last year I actually put out a new book called 2 a.m. Eternal, and it collects all of my posters and a lot of my comics from the last decade. So there's like over 100 posters in there for like DJ nights, drag shows, concerts, etc. Along with a lot of writing from me and my peers, like in the nightlife scene I'm in, talking about all of our memories from those nights. And that book also collects a series of concert reviews I did for Now Magazine a few years ago, where they would send me to shows and I would make comics just like reviewing the concert. I really miss doing those, and I'm sad the magazine is kind of flop now. But yeah, that would be a great entry point to like what I'm all about.
R.I.P. now.
Yeah, truly.
And Beddo?
I think a good entry point for my work would be a comic that I wrote and illustrated. It's called Udeja. It was the first issue. I believe it was released in 2022, like around the end of 2022. It's a post-apocalyptic story about Toronto and a group of youth and how they survive. Pretty basically. It might be hard to find now. I might have a few copies left on my website. Only had one print run, and I'm working on the second issue. So hopefully that will keep going.
Amazing. And Raeghan?
I would probably just say The Secret History of Black Punk. That would be a good entry point. I really, the advice when we were going around, that was of like, you know, you should like keeping going and like finding something that you're interested in and sticking with it or whatever is advice that like I wish that I had put in my head a little bit earlier, because when I was younger, I did lots of comics and it seemed like people weren't like very interested in it, and I got kind of discouraged and stopped doing comic books for a while. So like then I was in bands and things like that, and I think I would have like a much larger body of work if I had kind of stuck with it or whatever instead of getting discouraged. So this book is like kind of, you know, a cool return to me from something that, you know, I've been doing since I was 11 years old. But it's on Silver Sprocket and it's easily available. And it's, you know, me trying to start to dive in and collate like what Black punk bands are around and what different people can try to find it, see if, what they're interested in. I missed a million of them because it's only 64 pages or whatever, but it's definitely the beginning of like the work that I'm like most interested in doing and what you'll be seeing from me in the future a lot. So
Totally amazing. Great, guys. Now they haven't kicked us out yet. I think we still got 3 minutes left. So going back to what you were talking about earlier, Raeghan, about selling out.
yeah.
So I remember I don't remember what Tool song it was, but one of them, he talks about having a fan come up and saying, "You guys sold out." And he responds, I sold my soul to make a record. I sold out before you ever even knew my name.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Well,
think
Tool
that's
fans are the worst. That's what the reputation of Tool fans is actually the worst. I mean,
that's what, yeah, I've heard they're highly toxic.
I'm not saying anything good about the people in Tool. I'm just saying that like their fans don't seem great.
So do you think in this day and age, like it seems like that has it's almost like a quaint idea, the idea of selling out now, like something that was so important in the 90s now seems to be just like, do you think selling out is even possible today? Or because we're all having to promote ourselves and be our own cheerleaders, that it doesn't exist, or it does exist, or thoughts?
Yeah, I think the system, I don't know, the stage of like capitalism we live under and the systems we operate in, it feels like a requisite or something. Like it feels like you kind of have to some extent, like the level of like hustle people need just to like make ends meet and to get their work out there. Yeah, it's such a difference from what I grew up with, like the vibe of it. Yeah.
I think I think the concept of like selling out or talking about it, and it might be wrong, is more something that younger people do. And so I think that when you're at the stage of like really discussing that or talking about that, it's like it's really cool because you're a younger person who is thinking about like changing the system or bucking the system. And then when you get a little bit older and you're like, hey, capitalism, your body starts to hurt, you need medical, you need money, anything connected to money is like, you know, to some extent like selling a piece of your soul or whatever, then you kind of are almost out of that like headstrong thinking that, you know, that is, I don't know, that it's just like such a great way to be when you're younger and you're like, fuck this, and I don't want to be this, and like I'm gonna try my hardest to stay away from this, and like the ambition and like the energy and excitement and things like that. And I do think that you can be older and stay, you know, true to yourself, but I think it entails laying low. Like I have to make money to like I have to sell items to live or whatever, but I can abide by the ethical practices that I, you know, you know what I mean? And I can teach other people or younger people or talk to my friends and stuff like that about like idealized, you know, systems and things like that, or try to affect change. I don't think you can get older without softening, but I think you can still, you know, be cognizant of what's happening and try. I don't think you don't have to give up and say, I'm going to be a lawyer and change things from the inside.
Yeah,
But still keep our punk edge. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Beddo.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's also something like selling out is so subjective. Like what one person might think is selling out, another person might think is totally acceptable for them, right? So to me, as long as you're true to yourself, you'll never sell out.
Mm-hmm. There's always a part of you inside that that look, hopefully you can always keep a part of yourself inside that like capitalism can't like take from you. And a lot of that is investing in your community and investing in your friendships and investing in things that are not easily monetized or whatever. Caring for people and helping people and things like that, that's always going to be the most important thing that you can do in like any whatever else you're doing.
That is a beautiful sentiment to finish on. Faduma, we got you back. And I think that's it. Guys, thank you so much. That was an absolutely beautiful talk from all of you.
Oh, thank you.
And wildly insightful.
Great.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good to meet everybody.
Yeah, same. I had to find everybody I'm only on Instagram, so.
Oh yeah, I'd love to find you both on there though.
What's your Instagram?
Mine is peppermint _ Raeghan, like the gun.
Okay.
But yeah, if y'all follow me, I can follow you back. I have a hard time with social media, so I just only have one.
I think we're all feeling that.
Yeah, really.
It's a lot to manage, more than one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say, where has all the time gone? And an hour can go by super quickly. So I will just take this time to say thank you so much for such a fun and insightful panel on music and comics. Beddo, Eric, Kostiuk Williams, and Raeghan Buchanan. And thank you so much, Ben Shannon. It's an honor to have you as a moderator for this discussion. Just hearing each of your experiences with music and like how it informs your day-to-day, it all just reminded me of how connected everything is, especially in reminding me of how much reggae had an influence in early punk rock in philosophy and technique.
Huge.
Definitely.
So hearing Ben talk about reggae, and then hearing Raeghan talk about punk, and then hearing Eric talk about and both Ben and Eric talk about their experiences with like seeing certain shows and doing posters for shows. It's all very connected, and I love that. And like it all comes back to, you know, a very common root, and I just love that discussion. Yeah, I think you can also say the same about how we approach our artwork, like the commissions for album art and concept pieces that you've done and projects of the like. So a big thank you to each and every one of you on the panel for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. A special thanks to our programming sponsor, Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. And a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Toronto Public Library. TCAF would also not be possible without the support of the Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, and the Government of Ontario. And please save the dates, May 11th and 12th for the festival weekend. Additionally, our digital marketplace from May 3rd to May 24th. Thanks everyone, and have a wonderful TCAF weekend.